back to this Hannity special. We are just 61 days away from the last vote being cast in the biggest election of our lifetimes as we quickly approach November. There is growing concern about mass mail-in voting, and Attorney General Barr is now sounding the alarm. Watch this.
This is playing with fire. We're a very closely divided country here. And if people have to have confidence in the results of the election and the legitimacy of the government, and people trying to change the rules to this methodology, which as a matter of logic is very open to fraud and coercion, is reckless and dangerous. And the people are playing with fire.
Today we learned that the Trump campaign is now prepping for a contested election. The campaign's general counsel told FoxNews.com that they're forming what is being called Lawyers for Trump, a coalition to protect the integrity of the election. And who can blame them? Some Democrats, like Hillary Clinton, are giving advice like this to Joe Biden. Watch.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Joining us now for a reaction, Trump 2020 Director of Press Communications Aaron Perini and Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Thank you both for joining us. Greg, I want to start with you because that interview with the Attorney General not only was chock full of some very pertinent information, things that I learned and others should learn, but he was pretty fired up as well.
Well, he's right. I mean, if you do mass mail-in balloting, it is ripe not just for fraud and alteration and forgery and theft, but the real problem is not the Postal Service at all. It's the states and their infrastructure. I just got off the phone with a governor on the board of governors that presides over the Postal Service. They are undertaking brand new efforts of oversight to make sure that the postal system runs things smoothly, and they can do that. They handle 500 million pieces of mail a day, 4 billion around Christmas. So it's not the Postal Service. No, it's state election officials who for more than a decade have failed or refused to invest money in building new infrastructure to handle mass mail-in balloting. As a result, they're relying on outdated voter registration lists, so ballots get sent to people who are deceased. They get sent to people at their old addresses. And also the problem of, people who engage in widespread voter fraud that these election systems of the states are not equipped to handle. So these are outdated systems. They need to be updated before we move forward with mail-in voting on a mass basis.
Aaron, it's interesting to me that the Democrats turning the corner into September are suddenly saying out loud from Hillary Clinton on down, hey, don't concede no matter what happens, we're just not going to concede. And then you also contrast that with what President Jimmy Carter and some others notables have said about mail-in voting in the past. I mean, there is a high propensity of fraud that comes along with this. That's why the Attorney General is so concerned about it.
Absolutely. Mail-in voting, universal mail-in voting, where they just mail out live ballots to what are, as Greg pointed out, notoriously flawed voter rolls in this country, is ripe for fraud. The Attorney General pointed it out. And it's, it's really rich to hear from crooked Hillary Clinton coming up to talk about the fact that she is really actively trying to undermine the election integrity in the United States. That's what she's doing when she's saying, don't concede on November 3rd. If Hillary Clinton knows one thing, it's actually how to be a presidential campaign loser and how to concede to Donald Trump. Maybe she should stick to what she knows instead of trying to undermine the election integrity in the United States. President Trump is fighting for election integrity, making sure every ballot in the United States that is valid gets counted. We're going to make sure we protect that here on the campaign.
Greg, authenticating the vote should be the mantra. That's all we've asked for. So if on the one side you want voter integrity, you've got to be able to authenticate the vote, and yet the Democrats are fighting for the very issues that would make that impossible.
Yeah, they're trying to disenfranchise voters, and they don't even know it. Part of the problem is these state election officials hire vendors to print ballots But because now we're talking about millions and millions of ballots, they can't get it done in time. It doesn't get returned to the election officials who send it out to the voters in time. The ballots get received with votes cast after the election, so they're disqualified. I mean, you've got all of these problems that could have been corrected if over the years state officials had decided to invest the money for universal mail-in balloting, but they haven't. And look at some of the states where they've experienced this. In Washington State, for example, 300,000 ballots. 300,000 were listed as unknown, and they're very practiced in universal mail-in balloting. And of course, in New Jersey, you had fraud. A city councilman was arrested along with others. New York, in the primary just a couple of months ago, 84,000 ballots were disqualified. That means 1 in 5 voter ballots did not get counted.
Yeah, voters have got to get their ballots, get them early, and turn them in person if they possibly can, or certainly get them into the mail process earlier rather than later. Aaron Perini, Greg Jarrett, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We do appreciate it.